Have you ever been, sitting in a group, maybe at work, maybe just with friends, and you suddenly realize everyone else is kind of in on something, like an inside joke, or maybe they're working on something together you didn't even know about,
hmm
and you get that heavy sinking feeling like you're suddenly on the outside looking in?
Oh, yeah, that gut punch feeling. Social exclusion, feeling invisible.
Hmm.
It's one of the sharpest human pains, really.
Right. But what if that feeling, that deep ache, wasn't just, sadness or disappointment? What if your body, your actual brain, was treating it like a physical injury?
Exactly. And that's where things get really, really interesting.
It is. So today, we're doing a deep dive into something absolutely fundamental to being human: the need, the absolute imperative for belonging.
That's our mission today. We've looked at a whole range of research psychology, evolutionary biology, neuroscience, and it all points to this. Belonging isn't just nice, it's basically woven into our survival code. It shapes, well, everything. Our health, how we do at work, you name it.
Okay, but let's clarify first, because when we say belonging, we need to be clear. There are kind of two parts, right? There's the underlying need, that basic drive.
And motivation.
Yeah, the motivation. And then there's the sense of belonging. That's the feeling you get, the subjective thing.
Spot on. And it's crucial to understand belonging isn't just about being around people. You could have, I don't know, 1,000 followers online
Yeah.
and still feel incredibly lonely.
Right,
The research really hammers this home.
right.
It's not the number of connections, it's the quality.
So not just hanging out, it's about what? Frequent interactions that aren't negative.
Yeah, frequent non-aversive interactions, and here's the key bit. Within ongoing relationships where there's mutual concern, like you care about them, they care about you.
Mutual concern. Okay.
Yeah.
It's about feeling genuinely valued, part of things, not just sort of there.
Exactly, feeling integrated.
So where does this intense drive come from? Let's get into the origin story.
Okay, so the big foundational work here goes back to Roy Baumeister and Mark Leary. Their 1995 paper, it was called The Need to Belong: Desire for Interpersonal Attachments as a Fundamental Human Motivation.
Wow, that title doesn't exactly bury the lead. They were saying this isn't optional.
Not at all. Their argument was pretty revolutionary for its time. They said belonging is as basic a need as food, water, shelter, safety. It's an evolutionary thing.
How so?
Well, think about our ancestors. Individuals who were good at forming and keeping strong social bonds, they were just way more likely to survive, to fend off threats together, hunt better, raise offspring successfully. Social connection was survival.
That really puts it on a different level. If you think about like Maslow's hierarchy, belonging is that third tier, right? Love and belonging after the real basics like food and safety. But what
Yeah.
you're saying based on this research is you kind of need it before you can properly reach for the higher stuff like self-esteem or achieving your potential.
It really acts as the anchor. I mean, Maslow himself later said the hierarchy isn't always perfectly rigid. You might be working on esteem while still needing love. But that fundamental drive for secure connection, it underpins so much of our stable psychological growth.
And this pattern, this template for connection, it starts really, really early in life, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You can trace it right back to John Bowlby's attachment theory. Those very first relationships, usually with caregivers, create these things he called internal working models. Basically, your blueprint for relationships.
So if you had a secure attachment early on where you felt safe and cared for consistently,
That creates a secure base, Bowlby's term. It means the child feels safe enough to go out and explore the world, knowing they have that safe place to return to, and that early security. It shapes how you form bonds and even your sense of self later on.
okay, so that's the ideal. But what happens biologically when that secure base feels threatened? Or when we, as adults, feel rejected?
Right, and this is the real wow part for me. When that bond breaks or you get acutely excluded, your brain lights up in ways that are remarkably similar to when you experience physical pain.
Wait, hang on. So you're saying if I get left out of a group chat and then I don't know, bang my shin on the coffee table, my brain's response has similarities.
Not just similarities, significant overlap. It's not just a clever metaphor like heartbreak. Rejection literally hurts. Neuroimaging studies back this up.
Okay, tell me more. What parts of the brain are we talking about?
Well, the research points to areas like the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, the DACC, and the anterior insula.
Okay, DACC. What does that do in plain English?
Think of the DACC as kind of the brain's social alarm system, or maybe its pain monitor. It flags things that are distressing or problematic. The anterior insula is involved in processing the unpleasant feeling of pain, the emotional aspect.
So these aren't just random areas lighting up. They're linked to the unpleasantness of physical pain.
Exactly. And the evolutionary logic is pretty clear, right? Social ties were so vital for survival that our brains evolved to make social rejection feel immediately, intensely bad. It's a powerful signal. Fix this. Reconnect.
That link between social threat and physical threat, it's fundamental. Okay, let's flip that. What happens chemically when we do feel connected? When belonging is strong?
Ah, the reward side.
Mm.
That's where oxytocin comes in. It often gets called the cuddle hormone or the affiliative hormone.
Right.
When you experience trust, bonding, that warm, fuzzy feeling of connection, your brain releases oxytocin. It encourages more social behavior, strengthens those bonds, and generally makes you feel good. It works across various brain regions like the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala.
So oxytocin is basically saying, yes, this is good, keep doing this.
Pretty much. It reinforces those positive social connections.
But what about the flip side? What happens when that system is starved? Chronic isolation. You called it the isolation emergency.
Yeah, and this is where the health implications get really, really serious. Chronic lack of belonging throws your body's stress response systems completely out of whack. It kind of shifts the whole body towards what scientists call pro-inflammatory states,
Pro-inflammatory, meaning
your immune system is sort of constantly on low alert. It's like your body's perpetually braced for a threat or injury that isn't actually there. This low-grade chronic inflammation is bad news
because
it makes you much more vulnerable to a whole range of diseases: heart disease, stroke, dementia. The list goes on, and the stats on this are just staggering.
Okay, let's really focus here because this is something everyone listening needs to grasp. What are the actual mortality risks we're talking about with poor social connection?
The research is consistent and pretty shocking. Lacking strong social connections increases your risk of premature death by 26 to 29%.
26 to 29%, almost a third higher risk of dying early just from lacking connection. That's not some minor psychological effect. That's a major health risk factor.
It absolutely is. And to give you some context, the studies show that the health risk of being socially isolated is comparable to the risk of smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day.
15 cigarettes a day. Wow.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop there. Poor connection is also linked to about a 29% higher risk of heart disease and a 32% higher risk of stroke.
That comparison to smoking, it just forces you to rethink things, doesn't it? Should we be treating our social lives with the same kind of seriousness we apply to, say, diet or exercise?
Well, if you follow the biological evidence, the answer seems to be yes. Prioritizing meaningful connection isn't just about feeling good. It looks like essential preventative health care.
And we see this link powerfully in mental health too, right? Good belonging equals better mental health.
Definitely. There's a solid, moderate to strong link shown in research. When people feel they belong, their mental health outcomes are generally much better.
And the lack of it can be devastating.
Extremely. There's a concept in suicide research called thwarted belongingness. It's part of the interpersonal theory of suicide.
Thwarted belongingness, meaning
It's that painful feeling of wanting desperately to connect, but feeling fundamentally shut out, isolated, like you just don't fit anywhere. When that feeling gets combined with feeling like you're a burden on others, that combination is identified as a major risk factor for suicidal thoughts and desires.
that's incredibly sobering. And there is something specific in the research about loneliness and depression, the direction of the effect.
Yes, this is really important. Studies have found that loneliness tends to predict increases in depressive symptoms later on. But interestingly, the reverse wasn't necessarily true. Having depressive symptoms didn't reliably predict an increase in loneliness later.
So what does that suggest? That loneliness, driven by that unmet need for belonging, might actually be a primary cause of depression in many cases, rather than just a symptom.
That's exactly what it suggests. It implies that addressing the underlying social isolation, the lack of belonging, could be crucial for treating the depression itself. You might need to fix the connection problem first.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift from the fundamental science to how this plays out in real life, starting with education. How important is belonging for students?
Oh, it's huge. Really critical for academic success, for sticking with studies. Research across thousands of students shows a clear link. A stronger sense of belonging predicts better grades, higher persistence rates.
And I imagine this is even more complex for students from certain backgrounds.
Absolutely. Students from underrepresented minority groups or first-generation college students often face something researchers call Belonging uncertainty.
Belonging, uncertainty, like constantly wondering if you really fit in, if you're supposed to be there.
Exactly. And that constant questioning takes a toll. It increases stress. It can undermine academic performance. But the good news is, relatively simple interventions can make a big difference.
Like what?
Things like brief exercises that help students see that struggles are normal, that other students feel that way too. These kinds of targeted interventions have shown really positive effects, especially for students who might feel marginalized. It boosts their sense of belonging, and their performance often follows.
That really highlights how powerful just the feeling of being accepted is. Okay, let's talk about the workplace. We hear a lot about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, but now there's often a B added, DEIB. Why? Belonging.
Because, in many ways, belonging is the ultimate goal, the emotional outcome of successful DEI strategies. You can have a diverse workforce, diversity. You can have fair processes, equity. You can make sure people's voices are heard, inclusion.
But if they don't feel like they truly belong,
Then you're missing the key ingredient that leads to real engagement, motivation, innovation. When employees feel that sense of genuine belonging, they're more committed, they collaborate better, they're less likely to leave. It's good for people, and it's good for business.
it connects back to Maslow almost. You can't really reach for those higher level contributions if you're constantly worried about your basic social safety and acceptance within the team.
Spot on. If you're spending mental energy managing social threats, worrying if you fit in, you have less capacity for complex problem solving or creativity.
Now, belonging isn't always straightforward, especially for people navigating multiple cultures like immigrants. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a really important area. For people moving between cultures, belonging can feel very fluid. They're often dealing with acculturation, adapting to the new norms, and sometimes even something called cultural bereavement, which is like a grief for the culture they've left behind.
That sounds tough.
It can be.
Yeah.
It often leads to things like code switching, changing how you speak or behave depending on the group you're with, or feeling like you have to perform a certain identity just to be accepted.
Which must be exhausting, trying to fit in at work or school, but maybe feeling disconnected from your roots at home.
It definitely can be taxing. But the research also shows something really positive. When people successfully integrate both cultures, becoming biculturally competent, they often develop incredible resilience and broader perspectives. The ideal scenario is finding communities or workplaces that actually value both parts of their identity.
Okay, one last big area we have to touch on is the digital world. The internet, social media, it feels like a double-edged sword for belonging. A digital paradox.
That's a great way to put it. On one hand, yeah, virtual communities let people connect across huge distances. You can find your tribe, your niche, people who share very specific interests, which can be amazing for self-discovery and finding support.
Especially if you feel isolated where you physically live.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
the other edge of the sword is sharp. These same platforms can make social isolation feel even worse. There's constant comparison, curated perfection,
Fear of missing out.
right? FOMO is real.
Yep.
And particularly for young people, it can really intensify feelings of inadequacy or loneliness if they're mostly just passively consuming content instead of actively building real connections.
So ultimately, whether the online world helps or hurts belonging comes back to that quality thing again. Is it leading to real mutual connection, or is it just noise and comparison?
That seems to be the core of it. The platform itself is neutral.
Yeah.
It's how we use it, and whether it facilitates that genuine sense of mutual concern and being valued, that determines its impact on our fundamental need to belong.
Wow. Okay, this has been incredibly insightful, a real deep dive. If we had to boil this all down, what are the absolute key takeaways you want everyone listening to remember?
All right, if you remember 3 things, make it these. 1, belonging is biological. Seriously, rejection isn't just hurt feelings. Your brain processes it similarly to physical pain, particularly in those alarm centers like the DACC. That tells you how critical it is for survival.
Okay, biological. Got it.
2, it's a health imperative. Lacking connection isn't trivial. It carries major health risks comparable to smoking heavily. We're talking increased risk of early death, heart disease, stroke. Social health is physical health.
Health imperative.
Right. And 3, quality over quantity. True belonging isn't about having hundreds of friends or followers. It's about the quality of your connections, feeling genuinely seen, valued, and cared for by others, and caring for them in return. Mutual concern.
Biological, health imperative, quality over quantity. So stepping back, the big picture is Belonging isn't a luxury item on the hierarchy of needs. It's foundational. It's the bedrock for so much of our well-being, our health, our ability to thrive.
Absolutely. We are fundamentally wired to connect. When that wiring is faulty, the connections are broken, our whole system feels it, right down to the biological level. It shapes how we think, feel, and act across our entire lives.
Which leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it?
It does. And this is the thought I'd like to leave you, the listener, with. Given everything we now know that belonging is fundamental to our evolution, our physical health, our success in school and work, what changes do we need to make? Not just personally, but structurally. In our schools, in our workplaces, maybe even in how we design our online spaces. What institutional changes are needed to ensure that everyone has a genuine, fair shot at fulfilling this absolutely basic human need?